Thank you, thank you. I'll be brief. Don't want to compete with all the friendships people want to make here. So very quickly, our observations. I've been here in Davos many years, and I mean, one thing I want to sort of say that it's an interesting year, and I think it's reflective of where our industry is. So, how many people here have been to Davos before? All right, fine. You will probably have noticed that there's a lot less crypto and blockchain companies on the promenade. In fact, there's almost none, right, in comparison to the years before. But on the counterflip of that, inside Congress, there are at least 7 to 8 sessions on tokenization, blockchain, and crypto. And that kind of, I think, symbolizes kind of what's happened over the last 12 to 18 months, which is the institutionalization of crypto. Right? It's not just with Bitcoin ETFs, it's about who's paying attention. Right? So I was in several panels or discussions on sort of money markets, stablecoin tomorrow, CZ's talking tomorrow actually on his topic is not tokenization, he's on the panel called the era of finance. Right? So it's not about tokens or blockchain, it's just finance broadly, for instance, right? And of course there's tokenization topics out there. Right? So I think we're now at a stage where the industry is maturing and growing up. And I think we're also struggling. I think we're in this sort of a little bit of an identity crisis that I'm seeing as well between the people who came into crypto beginning and who are currently in the space and the institutions coming in. I'm not talking only about people saying, oh, decentralization and all that stuff, but rather around the fact that we're now essentially playing in a field with TradFi that is very, very different, right? And in a way, they've held up the market, but on the other hand, they think very differently around it. So things like 4-year cycles, all that kind of stuff is all slowly going away, and there's a new era that's ushered in. And I think the biggest growth areas, and this comes to some of the trends that I want to talk about, is about us growing up as well, and maybe some of the identity loss that some people have had in the crypto space because they feel like, they're no longer the weirdest and sexiest girl in the room, or boy, or whatever gender you want to pick, right? And that's because for a while, crypto was an outcast, right? They were kind of rare and they were odd, but they were special. And now, because of the institutions, we're more mass adopted, but we're also no longer quite as special. So we have to compete essentially with every other narrative that's out there. So if there's risk in the world, crypto is affected just the same way, not in the way that we think of traditionally that, crypto is independent of what's happening in the rest of the world. It's very much integrated because more and more institutions are owning this asset class and are continuing to do so. So a couple trends that we think 2026 are going to be relevant on, and then basically the bigger picture. One, when we talk about, we're known for blockchain gaming. When we talk about GameFi, I think it's important to not look at it specifically as games and finance, but sort of finances and games, but rather it's essentially gamified finance. And what that means is that this whole generation, particularly Gen Z and below, are looking at money very differently than we do. So we think of money, or older generations think of money in much more, let's call it serious ways, but the younger generation thinks of money in much more fun and entertaining ways because they've grown up in a gamification type culture. So older guys might call it gambling, right? But younger guys just call it having fun with it, right? In a way, right? Whether it's prediction markets, whether it's trading tokens, utility or meme coins, there's an element of fun and entertaining around that. And that basically gamification has evolved into the markets themselves. I don't mean just prediction markets. If you look at Robinhood or eToro, right? They've got leaderboards, they've got social rankings, right? It means the most successful companies in the space are going to be the ones who speak the culture of the youth. And that's essentially understanding what gaming culture is and introducing it in your products. So gamification is going to be a much more bigger theme. If you want to be more successful in the consumer side, you need to speak the culture of gaming. Crypto has been that experimental spot. Even funny names that we give essentially to our products, that could be very serious, whether it's like a sushi swap or a pancake swap or kind of weird names we give to people, that's actually part of the fun and entertaining nature that would have never been possible or thought about in traditional finance, right? The second thing this year, we're going to be very heavily affected by geopolitics, right? Crypto's now a little bit happier because Trump has said we're not going to use force in Greenland. It was fine, good. But basically, Trump remains the X factor. And so the messaging here really is that I don't think we need to rely on Trump to save crypto. I think last year, a lot of people in our industry were saying Trump is here, it's going to be great for crypto, he's going to save our industry, he's going to make everything sort of sky high. I'm afraid I'm going to have to tell all of you, he doesn't care. Okay? I mean, he cares to be voted in, and he cares to have a good economy, he'll probably care more about China. He'll care more about Venezuela. He'll care more about Greenland. Crypto is important because his family benefits from it. But I described sort of crypto for Trump as like his 8th or 9th child, right? So he loves crypto, but it's not our top priority, right? And so I think we need to understand that. We need to stand to ourselves and do what we've always done, and not rely on someone else. We've never had to rely on someone else. So why are we now relying on that? And last year, I think we caused a lot of damage because we really thought, Trump was going to go save the industry, which of course he actually did, I would say, more damage. Not regulatory, that was positive. But basically what happened to altcoins, the drawdowns, Trump token, Melania, all that stuff was hugely damaging. The other thing, of course, is because of institutionalization, RWAs is going to be a massive thematic. And I think this is, again, a little bit different from how we think of traditional tokens, but RWA is going to be a very big theme. I think for all of you, how do you translate essentially the language of tokens and blockchain to someone from TradFi or from Trad World, shall we say, even from Trad Gaming, right? That basically you explain to them things that they understand. And then you translate that and tokenize that. That's going to be really, really big. And we're very, very heavily focused around that, which is why stablecoins is such a big deal. Which then comes down to the other element, two closing thoughts. Stablecoins are going to continue to be all the rage, but we do expect a certain level of geopolitics around stablecoins. Stablecoins are not only important because they are going to end up being one of the, if not the largest buyer of US treasuries in the future. Stablecoins are important because they project essentially national power. Right? So if you think about the fact that there's 150 to 200 million, maybe 300 people in the world who are not Americans, who have a US dollar now, he may not even have a bank account, and yet every time the US prints some more money, they can tax all of those guys. Imagine you take that number to 1 billion people that use a US dollar stablecoin. Effectively, the US is dollar colonizing the world. Right? And so some nations get it and are reacting to it. Other places don't get it, like unfortunately Europe for the time being, and they are at risk of potentially becoming dollar colonized in the same way that Europe has already been tech colonized by American tech. Right? I mean, Facebook, Microsoft, Google, Apple, all of these are essentially owning Europe in one form or fashion. There's very little sovereign tech that exists in Europe, right, which is very sad, given the size and scale of the market. And one can make an argument around the protectionisms that happen in Asia, whether it's Korea or China, but actually that has served well for the domestic development of technology. I think stablecoins are very much the same thing. So that's generally a warning message around there, but also one that's going to be very important. Stablecoins is essentially very critical, not just for buying treasuries, but from a projection of power, soft and hard power. But the final thing I want to add is reflecting a little bit on where we are today. So what tokenization really does is expands value and value creation at the speed of the internet. And there was a different type of asset that we used to have 30 or 40 years ago that was the most valuable thing, and that was knowledge. We had knowledge arbitrage 40 years ago. Those who had access to an Encyclopedia Britannica, those who could have access to a television, my goodness, right? Those who had access to the newspaper, they had a privilege against others that did not. We can't imagine a world like this anymore, right? We used to have a digital divide, and we used to have basically digital literacy. If you were not digitally literate, you were cast out. And you lost against the ones who were digitally literate because they understood the internet, or because they understood Instagram, or they understood social networks, or they understand TikTok. Those ones beat out the competition that understood that part. So what is it for what we're doing here, all of us here in the world of blockchain, tokenization? What we're doing is we're basically making the world more financially literate. Every person that deals with crypto, whether they come from finance or not, suddenly knows something about money, whether they like it or not. There's no such thing as a Web3 socialist. Maybe there is, but I don't know them, right? Generally speaking, they're all capitalists for a reason, because they understand money, they get it. And it's a very small version of it, but eventually they evolve, right? And it's a new class of people as well. So imagine if you tokenize everything in the world, whether it's art or real estate, your stocks or whatever, your Pokemon cards, whatever. Actually, you're introducing the world of money, essentially a form of digital property rights, or property rights, into them, and they then start to realize what is money. Europe has this problem where people don't talk about money. I grew up in Europe. We don't talk about money here because we think it's rude, right? And as a result, you have a bifurcation of people who have money who have done. The world today, the top 1% who are the wealthiest in the world, happen to be the people who know the most about money. So how do we solve it? We think, make more people know about money. How do we do it? Tokenize the world. So 40 years ago, we had this arbitrage on knowledge. And what tokenization does is it kills this arbitrage on financial access and financial literacy. And if we succeed with that, that's how we think the world will become better again, because we'll all have essentially financial literacy and financial knowledge. And I'll come to the final point. 2 years ago, we tokenized a Stradivarius, which is a rare instrument. Most of you will never want to buy one because you don't care about that stuff, which is fine. I'm not offended. Now, my mom is a musician. She will never buy Bitcoin. Sorry, guys. She doesn't care. She also won't buy Tesla stock because she doesn't care, right? But she will buy a tokenized Strad because for her, she understands that that is valuable in her world. Now think about, how do our children learn about money? Not in school, unfortunately. They learn about it with Pokemon cards. The Pokemon card has no value itself, but within those communities, they start saying, hey, you know what? You want to buy it from me? Oh, here's $20, $5. Now it's worth 4 million, some of them, right? But through the process of something of passion, they learn it. But it has to have some financial value. That's what tokenization can do. Tokenization is essentially your passport to financial literacy. And if everything is tokenized in the world, which is what we believe will happen, then basically we will solve, I think, a lot of the global inequity problems in the world, which I think is a fitting conclusion here, since we're at the World Economic Forum. So thank you very much for your time, and Godspeed. Thank you.